The girl was about to perform 800 million kowtows to thank the commander for saving her life. Instead, he handed her a dagger and knelt down first. "Do you want me to guide you from the front or the back this time?" The girl transmigrated to a sci-fi world and was left to deal with the notorious reputation of the original owner who had offended all the big shots. "Haha, let it all burn," the girl thought. "There's no good life for me here." But when she saw the handsome faces of the big shots, her craving was instantly ignited. "Roasted meat, this big yellow duck head is my true love." Suddenly, Li Yue woke up, still catching her breath, and found herself in a completely unfamiliar place. When she looked down, she was startled to see a handsome man kneeling beside her. "You're awake? Are you feeling unwell?" His voice was incredibly pleasant, soft and gentle, but the aloofness and indifference within it were hard to grasp. Although she wasn't sure what was going on, Li Yue felt uncomfortable seeing someone kneeling before her. "I'm not unwell. Please, get up," she said, trying to help Yehua up. Her soft voice surprised Yehua, who was kneeling on the ground. There was no humiliation, no whipping, and she was even trying to help him up. Yehua got up, full of confusion, and his gaze towards Li Yue was filled with suspicion and scrutiny. This made Li Yue suddenly nervous. She was afraid the person in front of him would discover that she wasn't from this world. She could only pretend to have amnesia. "I don't seem to remember anything." Amnesia? Yihua's tone was filled with disdain. What new trick is she trying to play now? Li Yue lowered her head and suddenly noticed a hideous scar on Yehua's exposed forearm. "You're hurt." At this, Yehua's disdain deepened. "My intelligence is thanks to her. What's with the feigned concern now?" The next moment, he saw Li Yue grab his injured arm. So that's it. It seems his female partner wants to tear open the still unhealed wound to enjoy his pain. The expected pain never came. Instead, he felt a slightly cool fingertip gently stroking the area around his wound. He wasn't sure if he was hallucinating, but after being touched, the pain was gradually lessening. Yehua eyed Li Yue with a mix of suspicion and doubt. Is she really suffering from amnesia? Li Yue, of course, had no idea what was going on in Yehua's mind. She misinterpreted the expression on Yehua's face, thinking her actions were ineffective. She had transmigrated from the kingdom of beast tamers and possessed a purification ability that could only heal wounds or reduce pain. She didn't know Yehua was quite receptive to it, and she mistakenly believed that the last bit of her accumulated power was useless after arriving in this world. "Is there any ointment here?" She looked up at Yehua, blinking her starry eyes, which once again struck a chord in Yehua's heart. This was the first time his female partner had been so gentle and patient with him. "Are you hurt?" Yehua instinctively showed concern for Li Yue's well-being. No matter how much resentment he held, it was his duty as a male partner to care for his partner. Upon hearing this, Li Yue immediately flipped over, wanting to jump out of the treatment pod. She vaguely remembered that the male in front of him had saved her from a reassembly, so of course, she had to help him with his wounds. Before Li Yue's feet even touched the ground, she was stopped by a strong arm. Before she could react, she was in a full embrace with a warm, powerful chest. The original owner was so useless that she instantly turned red. The softness in his arms made Yehua panic. It was the first time he had such intimate contact with Li Yue, and the tips of his ears also turned red. "The ground is cold. Where are you hurt? Let me see." Yehua was about to check Li Yue's body, but Li Yue immediately stopped him. "I'm not hurt." Li Yue's resistant movements made him suddenly realize something else. His female partner had always disliked any form of contact with him. In the next moment, Yehua placed the little female on a nearby seat, then knelt on one knee, lowering his head in apology. "I apologize. I touched you without your permission. There is no whip on the ship, but I will accept my punishment when we return to the estate." This reaction was not what Li Yue had expected. She immediately denied it. "That's not what I meant." Yehua paused upon hearing this, then quickly pulled out a dagger from who knows where and handed it to Li Yue. His eyes turned cold again. A dagger was not as effective as a whip, but it would have to do. "Do you want to play with the front or the back this time?" "What kind of lewd talk is this? That's not what I meant. I was just trying to talk to you," Li said more urgently this time. But the concern in her voice made Yehua a little confused. He looked at the two little female in front of him, but he didn't say anything. He immediately got up and went to a nearby treatment device, putting his injured arm inside. Such minor injuries were nothing to an SS-class black-brown male lion. But in the past, His female partner would always enjoy tearing open his scabs, so he started to ignore these small wounds. They would only be torn apart by Li Yu anyway. Li Wei, of course, had no idea what was going on in Yehua's mind. Looking at Yehua's back, fragmented memories flashed through her mind. Yi Hua was the original owner's companion. The original owner was born into a declining noble family with a large inheritance, but in recent years she'd been squandered away. Fortunately, with Ye Hua as the chief commander, she was able to maintain her old lifestyle. At lunchtime, Ye Hua went to the kitchen to prepare lunch, while Li Yue aimlessly wandered around the villa. She opened a door in a corner and, after seeing what was inside, she walked in with a tremble. There were all sorts of torture devices in the room. Whips, daggers, and even an iron maiden. Suddenly, a flood of memories rushed into her mind. The memories this time were vast, but they all revolved around one thing: tormenting and humiliating Ye Hua in this very room. Li Yu was still trying to digest these memories when Ye Hua's voice suddenly sounded from behind her. "Can you wait until I get back tonight? How many days do you want to play this time?" The man's fingers were gripping the door frame so tightly, his knuckles turned white and seemed to be trembling slightly. When Li Yu didn't respond, he continued, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, no more than that. That's enough for you to play with all the tools inside." Li Yu was shocked by Ye Hua's reaction. She immediately walked over and cupped his face with both hands. "I'm sorry, I won't ever treat you like this again." But Ye Hua's expression seemed to become more serious. He took a step back, creating a distance between Li Yu's hands and his face. He spoke in a formal tone. "Dinner is ready." Then, without a hint of reluctance, he turned and left. Was there really no reluctance? Only Yi Hua himself knew that he couldn't have been more reluctant. When Li Yue's hands touched his skin, he felt an inexplicable sense of comfort and relaxation. He was a feline, after all, and he couldn't resist being held by his female partner. Li Yue, of course, didn't understand what was on Yi Hua's mind. It seemed she would have to put in some effort to comfort this tormented little persimmon at the training ground. Yi Hua was giving a speech to the new recruits, teaching them some basic combat principles. When he stepped off the stage, an old professor immediately approached him, his face filled with concern. Quote, "Ye Hua, how is your loss of control value lately?" Ye Hua shook his head helplessly. "I measured it once after coming to the military academy, and it has gone up by 3 points again." After fighting on the battlefield for so long, Ye Hua's loss of control value was already much higher than that of ordinary males. Recently, it had even broken through 78. Once a male's loss of control value breaks through 80, they will instantly turn into a wild beast with no self-awareness. Their fate would be to be mercilessly dealt with by the Empire. The old professor sighed and took out an electric shock collar. After putting it on, the collar would detect the wearer's mental state. Once the wearer showed a tendency to lose control, it would release an electric current to stimulate them, forcing them to calm down. At present, the only way for a male to reduce their loss of control value was with a companion's comfort. Even the collar could only control the loss of control value from increasing, not decrease it. In the afternoon, an unexpected guest arrived at Ye Hua's villa. Hu Kei was from the 9-tailed fox family, but his rank was very low, only 1 tail. Because of his weak and slender body and his mastery of seduction, he had the original owner wrapped around her finger. Most of the original owner's wealth had been squandered to please Hu Kei. Just as he was about to enter, he saw Yi Hua holding and coaxing Li Yue to sleep. This scene shocked Hu Kei. Li Yue had never allowed Ye Hua to have physical contact with her before. After Li Yue fell asleep, Ye Hua quickly came out, got on his aircraft, and left. Hu Kei instantly transformed into a black fox and jumped into Ye Hua's room. He transformed back into his human form. In his hand was a perfume bottle, but it wasn't filled with ordinary perfume. It was a pheromone perfume for felines. He had always disliked Ye Hua, so Li Yue had bought this bottle of perfume at a high price to torment him. He had heard that the chief commander's loss of control value was already close to the limit. Hu Kei began to spray the perfume in every corner of the room. He even started to fantasize about his wonderful life from tomorrow onward. When Li Yue woke up, it was already dark. She walked out of her room and suddenly smelled a very pleasant scent. She followed the scent to Ye Hua's room. "That's strange. Why does it suddenly smell so good?" Just as she was wondering, there was a sound at the villa's front door. Li Yue looked out and saw it was Ye Hua. She quickly ran down the stairs and went to Ye Hua. "Hua, why does your room..." Before she could finish her sentence, she saw Yehua's expression become visibly agitated. The look in his eyes instantly turned blood red. The name Li Yue seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. The next second, Yehua suddenly transformed into an adult, black-brown male lion. His brown fur stood on end like sharp spikes, trembling slightly with his breathing. Yehua! What's wrong? The sudden rage made Li Yue a little scared. The Yehua in front of her was completely different from the one she had seen today. Just as she thought Yehua was going to attack her, in the blink of an eye, the black-brown male lion disappeared. Yehua! Li Yue wanted to immediately chase after him, but suddenly a memory flooded her mind. In that memory, Yehua was tightly chained up. She and Huke were holding a small bottle and sprayed Yehua a few times. Yehua instantly transformed into a lion. He struggled violently, trying to break free from the chains, but Li Yue held a stun gun and pressed it firmly against the lion. The lion endured the pain and trembled violently. She and Huke laughed as they continued to shock him. It took a while for Li Yue to recover from the cruel memory. She could feel her hands trembling. No wonder Yehua had looked at her that way just now. She immediately ran outside to find Yehua. The real culprit, after doing the bad deed, didn't leave immediately. Instead, he hid outside the villa. When Huke saw Yehua charge out, he immediately opened his comm and called the security bureau. There's a completely out-of-control lion here. Hurry and send people to capture him. Li Yu's speed was, after all, no match for a male lion in a berserker rage. She was originally able to follow the trail Yehua left behind, but suddenly a male in a white uniform blocked her path. He was tall and straight, exuding a cold and dignified aura. But when he saw Li Yu's anxious face, his expression unconsciously softened. Miss, to ensure your safety, you cannot go any further. Li Yu looked ahead. A few people were in a standoff with the black-brown male lion. There were also a few snipers who had their tranquilizer guns ready, aiming at the lion and waiting for the right moment. Li Yu ignored the man's obstruction and tried to sneak past him again. She was from the kingdom of beast tamers and was very familiar with the enraged state of wild beasts. What's more, her ability to lure and evolve beasts would have some effect. Unfortunately, Li Yue was not successful this time. She only ran a few steps before and was blocked by the man with one hand and put on his shoulder. I'm sorry, miss, but you really can't go over there. His tone was very polite. Let me go. I have a way to calm that lion down. Li Yue struggled to get down, but the man's grip tightened. We have many ways to force him to calm down. As a noble female of the Empire, it is my duty to ensure your safety. Li Yu, on the man's shoulder, watched helplessly as several arrows flew toward the lion. The next second, the previously agitated lion immediately fell to the ground. The people in the security bureau uniforms immediately rushed forward, bound Yehua with iron chains, and carried him away. I have a connection to him. I'm his companion. Where are you taking him? Li Yu asked. The man was clearly surprised. To the security bureau's monitoring room. We'll observe his condition for one night. If his loss of control value exceeds 100, he will be executed in 3 days. Li Yu's face instantly turned pale. After a moment, she said to the man, Can you let me see him? Maybe I can help him regain his sanity. Fred was very surprised by this. In his memory, the females of the Empire were always arrogant and domineering and never gave males a kind look. This little female, however, not only spoke to him politely, but was also so concerned about her male. Nevertheless, Fred took Li Yue onto the security bureau's flying vehicle and carefully placed a soft cushion on her seat. When Li Yu arrived at the entrance of the monitoring room in the security bureau, Yehua had already been locked up. He had woken up and seemed a little agitated. There was a collar around his neck. Li Yu's eyes were full of concern. Can I go in? With the collar's restrictions and Fred there to protect her, there shouldn't be any danger for the little female. Fred thought for a moment, then swiped his card to open the iron door of the monitoring room. Li Yue immediately rushed forward and caressed the lion's face. The lion, who had been even more agitated by the intrusion, instantly calmed down under her touch and became very docile. He even took the initiative to rub Li Yu's palm with his head. This caused Fred, who had been very worried, to stand there in a daze. He had seen many sulfur monosulfide class psychics lose control. They would completely lose their minds and control over their emotions. He had never seen one calm down so instantly. The next second, the black-brown male lion even flipped over. exposing his soft belly for Li Yue to stroke. A click sounded, and the collar on the lion's neck automatically unlocked. Out of the two people present, only Fred knew why. The electric shock collar monitored the wearer's loss of control value in real time. If the loss of control value dropped to a safe range, the collar would automatically unlock. Fred immediately ordered the guards outside the door. "Get the loss of control detector!" The security bureau staff quickly brought the detector. It showed that the loss of control value had dropped to 30. Just by touching, it could reduce the loss of control value by more than 40 points in an instant. Fred was suddenly excited. Has the Empire found a way to reduce loss of control value without a female's deliberate comfort? Fred was about to go up and ask for the little female's name and identity. But at that moment, the little female looked very tired, and even a little pale. She looked up at him. "Hello, can I take my companion and leave?" "Of course you can. You can use the security bureau's flying vehicle to go back directly." Seeing Li Yue's polite tone, Fred felt a pang of sadness. He was suddenly a little envious of this male. Fred gave a self-deprecating laugh. He was not as lucky as this male. His loss of control value was about to cross the threshold, and even with all the family's efforts, they could only find him a female with a bad reputation and low psychic power, the Empire's princess. He had heard that her cruelty was on par with someone named Li Yue. When they returned to the villa, it was already dark. Although Ye Hua had not yet transformed back into his human form, he was very docile and followed Li Yue wherever she went, unwilling to leave her. Li Yue sat on the sofa, looking at the fierce but docile black-brown male lion in front of her. The huge contrast in his behavior made her unable to resist, and she rubbed the lion's head a few more times. But at this moment, Ye Hua clearly had no clear sense of his own size. He excitedly jumped around Li Yue, and then suddenly pounced on her. A large, fluffy mass jumped into her arms. She felt she didn't have the strength to climb up to her room on the second floor, so she just lay on the sofa with Ye Hua in her arms. The fluffiness in her arms felt very comfortable, and she fell asleep on the sofa. In a daze, she didn't realize that the fluffiness in her arms had turned into a muscular man. The next morning, before the sun came out, Ye Hua woke up first. When he found himself being held in Liu's arms, his body suddenly stiffened, and he froze on the spot. It took a long time for him to come to his senses. With a flushed face, he carefully got out of Liu's arms. His mind was blank, and he didn't remember what happened last night. His memory only stayed at the moment when he smelled the exclusive feline perfume on Liu and was about to lose control. He was confused. Li Yue had put perfume on him, but she didn't torment him when he lost control. Why? Just then, his comm on his wrist popped up with his loss of control value report. When he saw the data, Ye Hua felt a chill down his spine. His loss of control value had reached 98 last night, and he was almost dealt with by the security bureau. But why did his loss of control value drop to 30 so quickly? Ye Hua looked at the sleeping Li Yue on the bed with a complex expression. Could it be that Li Yue had comforted him when he lost control? Beasts in their tormented state are fierce and cruel, especially when they are doing difficult things. They are unrestrained and can cause great harm to the female who comforts them. Reducing the loss of control value from 98 to 30 was not an easy task. His companion was always so delicate, so how could she have endured it? He prepared to check Li Yue's injuries. As his hand was about to touch Li Yue's clothes, Li Yue, who had been sleeping soundly, suddenly showed signs of waking up. "Ye Hua, you finally turned back into a human!" Li Yue's hand reached out to him, and Ye Hua took it. "You've worked hard last night. Let me apply some medicine for you," he said. Li Yue was clearly not fully awake. She shook her head. "No, let me sleep a little longer. I'm so tired." Upon hearing this, Ye Hua felt a pang of guilt. He apologized. "Thank you for your hard work last night." Ye Hua didn't get a response. Li Yue had fallen asleep again. He hesitated. If the injury was serious, applying medicine would not be an easy task for Li Yue. It was better to let her rest first. Ye Hua then left Li Yue's room and prepared to return to his own room to calm down. But when he was still a few steps away from his room, he suddenly smelled a strong scent. It was the same scent that had made him lose control. Although Ye Hua could feel the turmoil inside him, he was able to control himself now. The perfume had been sprayed in every corner of his room. It was obvious that someone had done this on purpose. Now, it didn't seem like Li Yu had done it. There was only one person who could enter his villa without setting off the alarm, that disgusting low-level fox. Ye Hua immediately checked the surveillance footage outside the villa. As expected, He saw the fox sneak in after he left the villa. Yihua's left hand, which was at his side, clenched into a fist. It seemed he had to teach this pampered fox a lesson. Yihua walked out of his room, ready to go out and deal with this private matter. But when he passed Li Yu's room, he suddenly stopped. Her body was already delicate, and she had probably been tormented by him all night. She couldn't go without breakfast. As Yihua had expected, Li Yu was woken up by her rumbling stomach. She got out of bed and felt sore all over. She hadn't expected that the few-kilometer run the day before would have such a strong after effect. In the blink of an eye, she saw Yihua walk in. Liu Yu's eyes immediately lit up. "Yihua, how are you feeling now?" "Thanks to your help, I'm much better now," Yihua said. He walked to Liu Yu's side and knelt on one knee. His tone was more sincere than ever, completely different from the indifference and forced obedience he had shown Liu Yu before. "Please allow me to carry you to the dining room." Liu Yu quickly agreed. Okay, it's a good thing you came in time. Otherwise, I would have been in pain the whole way down." Yihua stood up and gently carried Liu Yu in his arms. When he heard Liu Yu's words, his guilt deepened. He said to the little female in his arms, "After we finish breakfast, I'll apply some medicine for you. How about that?" "Medicine? What medicine?" Liu Yu was a little surprised. "Can you even apply medicine for this? Won't the soreness just go away on its own after a while? Is there special ointment for it?" "Yes, of course," Yihua said. "The Empire has developed many special medicines for the female body. After using them, the injury will heal quickly. A female's body is delicate, and it's hard to endure their companion's needs when comforting them. Some medicines can even be applied beforehand, so you won't feel any pain during the process." Liu Yu didn't know that what she was thinking and what Yihua was saying were two different things. She immediately agreed. "That's great! The soreness is unbearable." She was even a little excited about the medicine. After they finished eating and cleaned up everything, Yihua went to Liu Yu's side with the ointment in his hand. He knelt on one knee with a pious attitude. "I'll apply the medicine for you." Okay. As soon as she said that, she saw Yihua stand up and bend down to pick her up. Liu Yu quickly asked, "Where are you taking me? Can't you apply the medicine here?" Yihua paused, but quickly returned to normal. "It's better to do it here." Then he snapped his fingers, and all the windows in the villa were covered. Yihua leaned in, his fingers still trembling as he touched Liu Yu's clothes. He had never had the chance to touch his companion so seriously before. But Liu Yu's injuries were caused by him, so Yihua stabilized his emotions and continued to move his hands. He carefully took off Liu Yu's clothes. Liu Yu was about to close her eyes and enjoy the moment, but a cool breeze blew, and she suddenly realized something was wrong. She quickly opened her eyes and saw that Yihua's fingers had already touched the last layer of her clothes. Liu Yu's cheeks instantly turned red. She quickly stopped Yihua. "Yihua, what are you doing? I thought you were just going to apply the medicine." Liu Yu didn't notice that Yihua's ears had also turned red. "I'm about to apply the medicine. You performed a psychic comfort on me last night, and I'm sure that area is very injured," he said. After hearing him, Liu Yu was completely confused. "Last night? Wasn't it yesterday afternoon? After you turned into a lion and ran away, I ran after you so fast that I hurt my muscles." Yihua was a little surprised by Liu Yu's reaction to his beast form, but he still asked, "Did I do anything out of line and hurt you last night?" "No, you were very well behaved and adorable last night." "Very well behaved and adorable?" The redness in Yihua's ears became even more pronounced. Suddenly, a message popped up on Liu Yu's comm. It was a reminder from the security bureau to provide psychic comfort to his companion in time to prevent him from losing control again. "Yihua, the security bureau sent me a reminder. How about I give you another psychic comfort later?" Yihua's whole body stiffened instantly. "Yihua, why aren't you answering me?" Liu Yu's words pulled him out of his daze. He hesitated for a moment, weighing his words carefully before speaking. "Are you inviting me?" The old Liu Yu, besides tormenting him, had never shown any interest in him sexually. And now, he was being actively invited by his female partner. At this, Yihua's hands trembled with excitement. "I guess so," Liu Yu said, not understanding why Yihua would ask such a strange question. But you already performed a psychic comfort last night." If we do it again now, you won't be able to handle it. Li Yue was confused. I won't be able to handle it? This doesn't take much effort, and I already told you that you were very well behaved last night. I didn't feel tired at all. Upon hearing this, Yehua's body stiffened. He lost his grip on the bowl in his hand, and it fell to the ground, shattering into several pieces. Li Yue was startled by the sound. I'm sorry I dropped it and scared you. Please punish me, my female partner. Just as he said this, Yehua was about to kneel down. Li Yue quickly reached out to stop him. The floor was covered in broken pieces of the bowl, and kneeling down would definitely hurt him. You rest here for a moment, Li Yue said. Then he cleaned up the broken glass on the ground. His heart, however, was soaring. Li Yue said she was very well behaved last night. Li Yue said she didn't feel tired at all last night. It seemed like today's invitation was a reward for his good behavior last night. Then, Yehua carried Li Yue to the room on the second floor and placed her on the bed. Please wait for a moment. I'll go take a shower first. Although Li Yue didn't understand why Yehua had to take a shower, she respected his decision. She didn't know that after Yehua left the room, he didn't go straight to his own room. Instead, he went to Hukei's former room and stole a set of clothes, then hid in the bathroom. In the bathroom, Yehua meticulously scrubbed every inch of his skin. Even though his skin was already a pale pink from the scrubbing, he didn't hold back. This was Li Yue's first time inviting him, and he didn't want to disappoint her. Not wanting to keep Li Yue waiting for too long, Yehua sped up and dried himself off. He picked up the set of clothes he had stolen from the fox's room. He was a little stunned for a moment, his fingers stroking the unopened packaging. It was a battle between his reason and his shame. She is my female partner. It is my duty to please her. What's more, this is the first time we're doing this officially. Then Yehua tore open the packaging and took out the new clothes. Strictly speaking, they weren't really clothes, just a few pieces of fabric. Yehua picked up a small, palm-sized black piece of cloth and tied the straps on both sides around his waist. Then he took a lace collar and tied it around his neck. There was also an arm ring and a leg ring, which were tightly strapped on his muscles. Of course, there was one last step. Yehua walked out of the bathroom and went to his wardrobe. He opened the wardrobe and took out a fluffy thing from the innermost hidden compartment. It was a silver foxtail. When that annoying fox first moved in, he had heard Li Yue say that she loved fluffy foxtails. He had no idea what came over him at the time, but he secretly bought a fake foxtail. Now, it seemed it was finally coming in handy. Yehua touched the fine fluff, and the texture was indeed nice. A lion's fur was a bit rougher and couldn't compare to this. Then, Yehua took a few deep breaths and pushed the fake tail behind him. Li Yue had been waiting in her room for a long time and still hadn't seen him. She was a little worried, so she immediately went to Yehua's room. Li Yue immediately turned the doorknob, opened the door, and walked in. Yehua, are you okay? The last word was swallowed back. She looked at the person in front of her, who was completely different from his usual dignified and unapproachable self in his uniform. She was so shocked she couldn't speak. Yehua had been struggling with the tail. When he ordered the tail, he didn't specify the size of the tip, and now he was having a hard time, which took him some time. He didn't expect Li Yue to suddenly walk in. He let out a soft gasp. However, as the chief commander who had been through a lot, he quickly composed himself and came to Li Yue, kneeling on both knees and apologizing. I'm sorry for making you wait. Li Yu didn't expect to walk into such a scene when she opened the door. Seeing Yehua suddenly kneel in front of her, she instinctively took a step back, but she lost her balance for a moment. She stumbled. Yehua quickly got up and wrapped his arms around Li Yu's waist, his voice filled with urgent concern. Are you okay? She suddenly crashed into Yehua's chest, and the strange new feeling made Li Yu's mind go blank again. By the time she reacted, she was already being carried horizontally by Yehua toward his room. Yehua, I wasn't waiting anxiously. I was just worried that you might have run into some trouble again. This explanation, however, made Yehua's ears turn pink in a place Li Yue couldn't see. Thank you for your concern, Yehua said. When he was gently placed on the bed by Yehua, Li Yue finally noticed Yehua's strange outfit. All the things she should and shouldn't see were in front of her. A wave of shyness washed over her. She immediately looked away and said with a hint of reproach, Why are you dressed like this? Because you like it. Yehua replied. Although Li Yue found it strange, she didn't refute it. She tilted her head, too shy to look at Yehua, but her mind couldn't help but replay the scene from earlier. Finally, she realized the main point. Yehua, aren't we supposed to be doing psychic comfort? She hadn't finished her sentence when she instinctively turned her head to look at Yehua, but the touch of their noses and the warmth in front of her made her swallow the rest of her words. At this moment, her nose was touching Yehua's, and they were pressed close together. She couldn't even tell if the heartbeats he heard were her own or Yehua's. Yehua, why are you so close to me? Yehua was kneeling on the bed, his hands supporting his upper body as he leaned forward, pressing close to Li Yue. Although Li Yue was asking a question, she didn't push him away. It seems she really likes this. Yehua thought to himself, making a mental note. Then, he took Li Yue's hand and placed it on his chest. His tone was very pious. My lord, you don't have to hold back. Soon, Yehua realized that Li Yue was stunned. He secretly rejoiced. This was a confirmation of his body. In psychic comfort, the female usually takes the lead throughout the process. Although Li Yue didn't make a move, Yehua keenly caught a hint of expectation and excitement in her eyes. He then boldly moved closer. He was greedy, yet he had to restrain himself as he enjoyed this gentleness. When Li Yue was completely lying on the soft bed, and her eyes could only see Yehua, she finally realized what she was doing. She placed her hands on Yehua's shoulders, wanting to push him away, but she hesitated. She had never been a part of this kind of thing before. But Yehua's movements were so gentle that she couldn't refuse. What Yehua said earlier was right. It seemed she really did like it and couldn't resist. Her hands on Yehua's shoulders gradually softened. Okay, my little darlings, if you don't want to see it, don't look. Luckily, I'm here. As per his routine, Fred went to patrol the Security Bureau's underground detention area. He completed his patrol with a heavy heart. If he didn't find a female companion soon, it wouldn't be long before he would go from a superior to a commoner. Unfortunately, his psychic level was sulfur monosulfide class, and in the entire empire, no one could successfully comfort him except for the cruel and arrogant princess in the palace. But the princess already had her male partner. He could only be a concubine. Am I really gonna have to throw away all my dignity and beg her? As he walked to the exit of the detention area, a figure suddenly flashed in Fred's mind. The gentle little female from last night, the one who would condescend to go to the Security Bureau's detention room for her companion. Fred stared at his comm for a long time. Finally, he opened it and found the information of the male who had lost control last night. Then, in the name of the Security Bureau, he sent a message to his companion. After sending the message, Fred smiled, and his eyes flashed with determination. He was born into the nine-tailed fox family and was a superior male who had successfully developed 9 tails. Winning a female's heart was as easy as pie for him. The next morning, when Li woke up, she felt weak and sore all over. She was wearing pajamas, which Yehua must have helped her put on after she fell asleep last night. The thought of what happened last night made Li Yue's cheeks instantly flush. She had no idea what happened last night. She just got sucked in so easily. Just then, Yehua walked in. Li Yue was a little flustered. How do you feel? Li Yue stammered. I'm very good. Yehua, please go out for now. Now that she was fully awake, she didn't know how to face Yehua. Yehua gave Li Yue a worried look, but ultimately obeyed her command. He nodded slightly, then turned to leave the room. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from behind him. He quickly turned around and saw that Li Yu had fallen to the ground. Seeing this, Yehua's face was filled with panic. He immediately went over and picked up Li Yue. How can I let my female partner fall to the ground? I deserve to die. Where do you want to go? I'll carry you. Li Yue was a little shy. To the bathroom. Okay, I'll carry you there right away. Yehua then took long strides and carried Li Yue into the bathroom. Do you need to use the toilet? Li Yu nodded. She was then placed on the ground by Yehua. She didn't expect her legs to be so weak. She lost her footing and fell into Yehua's arms again. Yehua looked at the little female in his arms and thought for a moment. Then he said, I'll help you. Help me with what? Li Yue asked. Before she could finish, she felt Yehua supporting her with one hand and reaching for her pajamas with the other. Realizing what he was about to do, Li Yue immediately reached out to stop him. No, you can't! I'm just holding you and helping you use the toilet. I won't do anything else. Yehua's tone was surprisingly firm, a stark contrast to his actions. Li Yue was like a child, held by Yehua and brought to the toilet. No, Yehua, I'm not a child anymore. Strictly speaking, I'm your guardian. You don't have to be so emotional about this. But Li Yue twisted her body, and a wave of warmth rushed into her ears. She could feel Yi Hua's nose gently rubbing against her cheek. Be good. Yi Hua's voice was always soft and magnetic, filled with infinite tenderness and affection. It was as if it had a magical power that made Li Yue's mind a little hazy. When she finally came to her senses, she had already finished. Yi Hua gently helped her with everything and then carried her downstairs to the dining room. The table was filled with mouth-watering dishes. A faint blush rose to Li Yu's face, gradually spreading from her cheeks to her ears until her whole face was red or enveloped in a mist of shyness. Yi Hua served Li Yue food, then sat across from him. However, the little female in front of him did not start eating for a long time. Yi Hua looked up at his little female. Her eyes were lowered, her long eyelashes trembling slightly, and her eyes shimmered with shyness and panic. When she occasionally looked up at him, she would quickly lower her head again. Seeing Li Yue like this, he found it incredibly adorable and immediately had the idea to tease her. You should get used to all of this as soon as possible, such as freely ordering me around or using me. As expected, after he said this, the blush on Li Yu's face deepened. She picked up her cutlery in a huff and stuffed all the food in front of her into her mouth. Her cheeks were puffed up, which was very cute. I don't understand what you're saying, she said. Even when she was angry, she was so adorable. Yi Hua's heart had long since melted. He never thought that he, who had hated Li Yue just 2 days ago, would now, in order to tease her, willingly lower his tone and abandon his dignity to say such things. A rare smile appeared on his usually cold face. Li Yue, that was just a joke. Because of this little incident, Li Yue ate very quickly. After eating, she sat bored on the sofa. Just then, a message popped up on her comm, reminding her to take Ye Hua to the security bureau for a loss of control value test. Ye Hua, are you free? Let's go to the security bureau together. Ye Hua replied as he cleaned up the kitchen. Thank you for your concern. I don't have any plans today. In the past, only males who were disliked by their females would be mercilessly thrown into the security bureau to be destroyed by the Empire. He was clearly not in that category now. At this moment, the corners of Ye Hua's mouth curled into a smile. So, this is what it feels like to be cared for and concerned about. So, when Yi Hua appeared at the security bureau with undisguised joy in his eyes, the staff were very surprised. He was sent to the security bureau by a female, and he could still smile? Li Yu and Ye Hua arrived at the location mentioned in the notification. Inside the top floor office of the security bureau, the person sitting there was naturally noble and powerful, the leader of the entire security bureau, someone that no male in the entire empire dared to offend. But when they arrived at the office door, the joy in Ye Hua's eyes instantly turned into vigilance. He smelled a very disgusting scent. Ye Hua, let's go in, hearing Li Yue's voice. The smile returned to Ye Hua's face. He was about to knock on the door, but before his hand could fall, the door opened automatically. Seeing Li Yu walk in, the man behind the desk immediately stood up and walked toward her. The man was wearing a silver-white uniform with sharp and smooth lines. The metal buckle on his belt radiated a cold luster, adding a touch of solemnity to him. He wore a pair of long, white military boots. The material of the boots was as white as snow, and the height of the boot shaft was just right, tightly wrapping his calves, making his legs look even longer. Li Yue was a little surprised to see the familiar face. It's you. And Ye Hua, seeing the man's ulterior motive behind his outfit, gritted his teeth and squeezed out 3 words. Yeah, Fred. Fred ignored Yi Hua's hostility. A graceful and friendly smile hung on his face. He put his right hand on his left shoulder, bowed to Li Yue, and said, It's an honor to see you again. So you're the bureau chief? I received your message and brought Ye Hua here for the loss of control value test. But it seems the test isn't here. Upon hearing this, Fred explained, You are a noble female of the Empire. When the male is undergoing the loss of control value test, you should rest here for a while. Behind Li Yue, where she couldn't see, Yi Hua's face was covered in frost, and his eyes burned with fury. His voice was as cold as ice. What do you mean? You want to be alone with my little female? He had finally gotten rid of one fox, and now another one was here. Ye Hua, don't be afraid, I'll be with you. Li Yue now understood what the security bureau meant to males. She instinctively attributed Ye Hui's actions to his nervousness and fear. When she saw Li Yue looking back at him, Yihua immediately lowered his eyes to hide the anger. When he opened his eyes again, his gaze had become focused and warm. Seeing the two of them so in love, Fred naturally felt a pang of sadness. Why wasn't he so lucky to be matched with such a perfect female? But soon, he was filled with fighting spirit again. He wouldn't give up so easily. Fred slowly spoke. "Commander Yi, you dare to let your female partner go to such a dangerous place. You are truly an incompetent male. But it's understandable that a commander who is busy with war all year round would be a bit incompetent. It's not like us nine-tailed foxes who have to relearn our male virtues every year. We naturally won't make such mistakes." Yi Hua's hands clenched into fists. His knuckles made a sizzling sound because of the force. This familiar tone and familiar rhetoric, he had heard so much of it when that annoying fox was still around that his ears were calloused. What kind of nonsense were the nine-tailed foxes teaching? "Don't say that, Yihua. He's very considerate to me." Hearing Li Yue defend him, Yihua's hostility instantly faded. He stepped forward and boldly held Li Yue's hand, raising an eyebrow at Fred. "My companion treats me very well. I will naturally protect her at all times. You don't need to worry about it, Bureau Chief." With that, Yehua held Li Yu's hand and prepared to leave. If Fred were a beast, his fox ears would have drooped. A female actually defended a male. Yihua actually had such a companion. It was truly enviable. Seeing the two of them leave, Fred immediately hurried to catch up. "Ms. Liu, the loss of control value test area is over there." Yihua lay down in a test pod, which began to work. Fred and Li Yu stood beside him. This was a rare chance for Fred to be alone with Li Yue. But before he could say a word, the little female beside him kept asking questions with a face full of concern. "Bureau Chief, will Yihua be in any danger while lying down? Bureau Chief, what else should we pay attention to? Bureau Chief." Fred didn't expect a female to be so concerned about her male partner. His jealousy towards Yihua deepened. He cleared his throat and, in what he thought was a good voice, explained each of the questions while showing off his magnetic voice. After he finished explaining everything, Fred seized the opportunity and, as if nothing had happened, tried to test her. "Miss Liu, Imperial law allows females to have multiple male partners. You only have one now, and the commander is very busy with work, so he'll inevitably have moments when he can't take care of you. What kind of males do you like? Maybe I can introduce some to you." With Fred's expectant eyes on her, Leo shook her head. "No, I don't need any other male partners." Upon hearing this, Fred froze with his mouth slightly ajar. She's not a sociopath and is a female who doesn't like to socialize with others. She's actually this good to me. He had never met such a kind female before. Just then, Yehua walked out of the test pod. Li Yue immediately rushed to him. "How was it, Yehua?" Yehua steadily caught Li Yue, who pounced on him. His voice was incredibly gentle. "The test results are out. My loss of control value is 0. "That's great!" He immediately turned to Fred. "Bureau Chief, Yehua's loss of control value has dropped to 0. Does this mean we don't have to come anymore?" Although he was very reluctant, Fred tried his best to force a smile and nodded. "That's right." When Yehua walked past him, holding Li Yue's hand, Fred could see a very clear warning and hostility in Yehua's eyes. But so what? It seemed he needed to change his approach. As soon as they got home, Li Yu leaned on the sofa, found a very comfortable position, and started browsing her calm. Yihua found an excuse and went to the second floor. No one was more familiar with this room than he was. This was the place where the old Li Yue had tormented and humiliated him countless times. Yehua walked around inside and finally took down a black whip. The old Li Yu had loved this one the most. Every strike was very painful, but the marks left on his body were special. Fred's actions today made him have to take precautions. After all, Li Yu had once been seduced by a useless fox. He had to use some tricks to keep Li away. After getting what he wanted, Yehua quickly went back to his room, took out his uniform from the wardrobe, and put it on. The material of the dark blue uniform was crisp, and the golden buttons shone brightly against the dark blue, like stars twinkling in the night sky. Yihua quickly changed into the uniform and then took the tools downstairs. Fred wasn't the only one who could wear a uniform. Li Yu heard footsteps approaching. "Yehua, I was just browsing my comm and saw that some males with an S-class or higher psychic level can experience a sudden rebound in their loss of control value." Yihua's voice was steady and soothing, gentle and magnetic. "Can I ask for a comfort from you?" "Of course you can. Is one time enough? They say that a male's loss of control value will only be completely stable after being comforted for 7 consecutive days or more. Based on the previous experience, she only needed a simple touch or a hug, and Yehua's loss of control value would drop a lot. Liyue looked up, but the sight in front of her made her eyes turn into hearts. Yihua was wearing a dark blue commander's uniform, like a mysterious ocean under a deep night sky, exuding an irresistible solemnity and authority. The straight fabric was as neat as if it were cut by a knife, accentuating the wearer's resolute jaw and cold face. The belt around his waist was tightly cinched, highlighting Yihua's tall and straight figure. The metal buckle on the belt radiated a cold luster, and he was holding a small leather whip in his hand. Yehua came to Liyue, knelt on one knee, and offered the whip with both hands. Play with what you like. Liu didn't know what was wrong with him, but he took the small whip from Yihua's hand. But his mind was in a daze because the man in the crisp uniform in front of him was just too tempting. How do you want to play? Yehua lowered his head and rubbed his face against Liyue's palm. For some reason, he was a little addicted to being touched by Liyue. Feeling the warmth in his palm, Liyue finally came to his senses. He quickly threw the small whip to the side. Yehua, don't do this, you'll get hurt. The pain was nothing to him. But when Yihua looked up and saw the sincere and concerned look in Liyue's eyes, he swallowed the words. Yehua, there's still some time before lunch. Let me perform a psychic comfort on you. Liu was about to place his hand on Yehua's head, but the next second, he was carried by Yehua and taken upstairs. It wasn't until Liyue was placed on the bed and felt Yehua's soft touches on his cheeks and neck that he realized something was wrong. Yehua, are we going to do what we did last night? Yehua's hair brushed against his neck and collarbone, feeling a little itchy. Didn't you just agree to comfort me? Upon hearing this, Liu finally realized that the comfort he had in mind and what Yehua had been doing were two different things all along. The words of explanation were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say anything for a long time. What's wrong? Even though he knew what was going to happen, even though it was very different from what he had initially envisioned. Liyue still didn't try to stop him. Nothing. It's just that your belt is getting in the way. Upon hearing Liyue's voice, Yehua immediately stood up and unbuckled his belt, then took off his jacket. The shirt was tightly stretched across his broad chest as if it were about to burst open. Liyue's eyes were fixed on Yehua's full and smooth muscles. Suddenly, his hand was taken by Yehua and placed on his chest. Yehua leaned down again, his light and gentle touches accurately arousing his body. But the strange feeling from before didn't disappear. Liyue reached out and pushed Yehua. You're still in my way, Yehua's voice, soft and doting, whispered in his ear. Okay, I'll get rid of it now. Then, he heard a muffled groan from Yehua. Only then did he realize something was wrong. Memories of what happened last night suddenly flooded Liyue's mind. The vivid scenes made him tremble uncontrollably at the thought of that terrifying object. Yehua, I'm scared! Yehua's kisses didn't stop. Trust me, I'll make you feel comfortable. From then on, Li clearly felt that Yehua's kisses on him became more intense. After it was over, Liyue didn't wake up until noon, but he couldn't go without food, especially since he had used up a lot of energy. But the delicate person on the bed couldn't even manage to open his eyes. Yehua thought for a moment and finally brought over a bottle of nutrient solution. He held the delicate person in his arms and carefully poured the nutrient solution into Liyue's mouth. After finishing the bottle, Liyue finally regained some energy. He was limp in Yehua's arms, but he suddenly remembered something and tried to prop himself up. Yehua, I told you this morning that the 7 consecutive comforts don't count, right? He had no idea that what Yehua had meant by comfort was this kind of thing. Yehua smiled with infinite indulgence. He lowered his head and rubbed his nose against Liyue's. Okay, he said softly. Then Yehua put Liyue back on the bed. He still needed to rest. But before Yehua left the bedroom, he couldn't help but look at Liyue on the bed with a concerned eye. He found it strange. After the 2 comforts, including the one just now, Liu showed obvious fatigue and weakness. Could it be that Liyue's own psychic level was too low to endure it? It seemed he would have to take him to the hospital for a detailed checkup after he recovered. In the security bureau, Fred sat in his office. In front of him was a completely black whip that radiated a cold light. He had just found out that there was once a useless person in his family who, through some unknown means, had successfully charmed Liyue and even lived with him for many years without a proper title. His comm kept popping up with message notifications, but his eyes didn't even glance at them. His mind was filled with how to win Liyue's heart. Just then, there was a knock on the office door. The person who walked in was Hu Kei. "Young master, you were looking for me?" Hu Kei saw the cold and serious Fred, and he couldn't stop trembling. He was just a useless person in the nine-tailed fox family with no presence, while the person in front of him was a rare S-class strong person and had even won the family head's favor. Fred's eyes quickly scanned Hu Kei, and he felt disdain in his heart. He's not even half as good-looking as me. He had dressed up meticulously today, yet Liyue was completely indifferent. Fred tried to suppress the emotions in his heart and asked in a condescending tone, "The Security Bureau has received a complaint that a male used a hormone-based perfume to maliciously induce another male to lose control. According to the rules, such a male should be immediately eliminated." Hu Kei immediately knelt down, shaking like a sieve. Young master, please spare me." Fred's voice was still as cold as ice. He let out a cold laugh. "He's confessing without being asked. The surveillance footage has already been sent to me. You are as good as dead now. But since you're from my nine-tailed fox family, I don't mind taking a trip to Lord Liyue's house for you. For the sake of your life, I advise you to tell me all of Lord Liyue's preferences." If it were a normal day, the somewhat clever Hu Kei might have noticed Fred's ulterior motive. But at this moment, his life was on the line, so he had no time to think about anything else. He stammered out the truth. Liyue likes to torment males the most. He likes to see them cry from the pain. Hu Kei told him everything that had happened when he was with Liyue in great detail. After listening to Hu Kei, Fred couldn't help but frown. The Liyue, in Hu Kei's words, was different from the one he had seen with his own eyes. But it doesn't matter, he thought. What's wrong with such a beautiful, kind, and gentle female liking to see a male cry? Fred opened his palm and a completely black whip appeared on it. "Get out!" Hu Kei's legs went soft, and he scrambled out of the office. Fred immediately locked the office door, pulled all the curtains shut, and took off his shirt, revealing his solid and powerful upper body. He held the long whip and stood in front of the mirror. He released one of his 9 tails and used the tip to wrap around the whip. After setting his stance, he used his tail to whip his back. A red mark immediately appeared. This pain was nothing to him. Then, one after another, red marks appeared on his back. Under his careful planning, the red marks were very neat and good-looking. After 50 lashes, Fred retracted his tail. He came to the mirror and tried to blink his eyes. His long, narrow fox eyes instantly became watery, and his eyes shimmered with a pitiful light. He was very satisfied with this expression. Then, Fred put his clothes back on and walked out. The secretary, who had been waiting outside the office door all morning, was there. "You know what to do, right?" The secretary bowed his head. "I know, sir." Liyue didn't know how long she had slept. When she opened her eyes again, she felt much less tired. It's strange, she thought. I didn't use much energy either time, and Yehua was the one doing everything, so why am I so tired? Liyue got out of bed and stretched her body. Suddenly, she heard the cry of a small animal from the balcony. She quickly opened the balcony door and walked out. She looked down and saw a completely white, fluffy animal in the small garden in the backyard, lying next to a bush. There were a few red marks on its body, as if it was bleeding. Liyue quickly went downstairs to the small garden. The poor little white, fluffy animal was indeed bleeding. Yehua! Yehua! Come and help me. Hearing Liyue shout, Yehua rushed over as fast as he could, instantly transformed into his beast form, and leaped to Liyue's side before transforming back into his human form. Yehua, a little fox is hurt. Yehua looked in the direction Liyue was pointing and gritted his teeth. What a beautiful sulfur mono, sulfide class, 9-tailed fox with a red mark on his brow, he thought, especially since Liyue's hands were constantly stroking the fox. Yehua, quickly go get some medicine. Normally, Yehua would have immediately carried out Liyue's request, but this fox was clearly faking it. An SS-class male beast could not be so weak from a few minor scratches. Yehua stepped forward, lifted the white fox from the ground, and said to Liyue, "Don't worry, there's an advanced treatment pod in the villa. This fox won't be in any danger." Liyue also nodded with concern. "Then let's put it in the treatment pod quickly." With Liyue's approval, Yehua's footsteps quickened. He had seen this little trick of pretending to be sick to gain a female's pity countless times from the previous fox. It seemed that the young master of the nine-tailed fox family was only so capable. At this moment, Yehua didn't realize that he was taking things too simply. The white fox, being held by his tail, glared at Yehua and bared his teeth at him from an angle Liyue couldn't see. "Yehua, he'll be more in pain if you carry him like that. Let me hold him." Just as Liyue's hands were about to touch the white fox, Yehua instantly blocked her and held the white fox in his arms. Then he said to Liyue dotingly, "He's very heavy. I'll do it." If Liyue weren't there, Fred, who heard this, would have immediately summoned his 9 tails and fought Yehua. This was his body, which he was so proud of from exercising every day. Where is he heavy? Although he wasn't being held by Liu, Fred wasn't in a hurry. His plan had just begun. Just as the two of them and the fox walked through the back door and into the villa, the front doorbell rang. Liyue was about to go and open the door, but Yehua stopped her. He casually put the fox on the ground and then went to open the door. The person who came was a young male, but the uniform he was wearing indicated his identity. He was from the security bureau. "Hello. Sorry to bother you. My name is Wei Qi, and I'm here to find my young master. Have you seen an injured fox?" Until this moment, Yehua still didn't realize the seriousness of the situation. He simply thought that the young man in front of him would take the annoying fox away from Liye. So he didn't stop him and let the young man walk in. At this moment, the white fox was already lying on Liyue's lap, being stroked by Liu. Wei Qi stepped forward and bowed to Liyue. "Lord Liyue, thank you for taking him in. I'll give him the medicine that can help him transform back into his human form." With that, Wei Qi stepped forward and put a pill into the white fox's mouth. Not long after, the fluffy animal instantly turned into a man with a bare upper body. The transformation was too sudden. It was the same man, but in a different scene and a different outfit. Liyue was instantly captivated by Fred's seductive body. His chest muscles were full and well-proportioned, rising and falling slightly with each shallow breath, like waves gently lapping at the shore, with an irresistible rhythm. The Fred at this moment was completely different from the one he had seen in the morning. He had many red marks on his front and back, and his face was a little pale. Fred, who was half lying on her lap, suddenly spoke. "Lord Liu, your hand." Upon hearing this, Liu finally realized that her hand was perfectly placed on Fred's perky and firm buttocks. She had just been stroking the fluffy animal and hadn't had time to pull her hand back. I really didn't have any ulterior motives. Liu immediately took her hand off Fred's buttocks. The feeling on her palm made the tips of her ears feel a little hot. At this moment, Wei Qi bowed respectfully to Liyue. "Lord Liyue, please spare our young master." Liyue was even more confused. "What do you mean?" Wei Qi's face was full of anxiety and pleading. He continued, "Young master received a complaint from Lord Yihua and found that a fox from the 9-tailed fox family had offended you and your male partner. Young master felt that he was not managing things well and punished himself with the Xuan Tai whip 100 times, 50 on the front and 50 on the back. He originally wanted to come to your residence to ask for your forgiveness in person, but he was so exhausted on the way that he transformed into his beast form. Lord Liyue, I beg you please spare him since he is already seriously injured." Liyue exclaimed in shock. "What? 100 lashes? This has nothing to do with Fred. I never blamed Fred." As she was shocked by Fred's actions, she looked down and saw that he was still lying on her lap. Fred, who seemed to have noticed Liyue's gaze, propped himself up with his hands, wanting to get up. But his hands were trembling, and before he could get up very high, he fell back onto Liyue's lap. Fred pretended to be weak and said to Liu, "I'm sorry, Lord Liu. I've offended you again." Then he tried to get up again. Liu immediately reached out and gently stroked Fred's back, deliberately avoiding the scars. "Don't rush. You're so badly injured. Don't move around." Although his goal was achieved, the plan wasn't over. Fred made another difficult attempt to get up. Wei Qi spoke urgently again. "Young master, what Lord Liu said is true. The Xuan Tai whip not only hurts the skin, but also the bones and internal organs. You should not move around, lest you worsen your injuries." "How can I not move? I came here to apologize to Lord Liu. It's already extremely offensive to stay here for too long." At this moment, Liu's voice was tinged with anger. "Fred, stop it and lie down properly." Yihua, who had been standing on the side without saying a word, watched the two people in front of him perform. He was filled with contempt. No torture device can cause any real harm to a male above S-class. Fred's injuries will heal on their own in no time. It was hard to believe he could come up with such a trick, using Li Yu's soft-heartedness. Yehua, who had been infinitely indulging in Li Yue's gentleness just a few days ago, felt for the first time that his little female should not be so soft-hearted. Yehua took a few steps forward and came to the sofa. He said to Li Yue softly, Yue, let me take care of this injured fox. It will take a lot of energy to treat his wounds, and you will get tired. Wait, Yehua, I want to try. Then she calmed her mind and placed her hand on Fred's muscular back. She had just felt a power she had never felt before moving inside her body. When she was in the kingdom of beast tamers, she would always hear her elder brothers and sisters who had awakened their abilities talk about the feeling of their abilities flowing through their bodies. It was the first time she had felt such a wonderful feeling, and she wanted to try it. Fred felt a warm hand was placed on his back. Suddenly, he clearly felt a cool power flowing through his body, and the harmless pain on his body was instantly swept away. Even the potential for loss of control that had always been hidden deep inside him, which he had to work hard to suppress, was instantly relieved. Li Yu's exclamation of surprise suddenly rang in his ears, and Fred immediately turned his head to look at Li Yu. He saw that Li Yu's face showed obvious fatigue, and he seemed dizzy. Fred no longer cared about acting. He immediately climbed up from Li Yu's lap and was about to sit down to check on her, but his body was suddenly pulled away. By the time he reacted, Yehua was already sitting next to Li Yue, holding her in his arms. Yue, are you feeling unwell? Li Yue tried her best to maintain her composure. Yehua, I feel a little tired. Upon hearing this, Yehua was still very worried. He immediately picked up Li Yue and carried her to the second floor, putting her in a treatment pod. He pressed the button to check her physical condition. The results showed that, besides being a bit tired, Li Yue had no other issues. Only then did Yehua breathe a sigh of relief. He picked up Li Yue, wanting to take her to the bedroom. As he walked out of the treatment room, he realized that the fox was also following him. His delicate partner was in this state because of this pitiful fox. Naturally, Yehua didn't have a good expression on his face for Fred. He ignored Fred and was about to walk away with Li Yue, but he didn't expect the delicate person in his arms to speak. Wait, Yehua! Yehua had no choice but to stop. Li Yue looked up at Fred. Because of the fatigue that was sweeping over her, her voice became soft. Fred, how are you feeling now? Are you still in pain? After what had just happened, Fred was filled with guilt. He didn't expect that his selfishness would make Li Yu so tired, and now he never thought that even after what had happened, Li Yu would still be willing to talk to him and show concern for his condition. Lord Li Yu, don't worry. I'm feeling much better. Hearing this, Li Yu also felt relieved. It seemed what she had done was effective. If you ever feel unwell again, you can come to me. She had just felt a frantic energy inside Fred's body. She had felt the same frenzy when she first touched Yehua. However, after 2 nights of comfort, she no longer felt this way when she touched Yehua again. Li Yu guessed that this was probably what everyone called the loss of control value. As she was thinking, Li Yu suddenly felt something warm and soft on her forehead. It was Yehua. Yu Yi, I'll carry you back to the room to rest. Let's not worry about outsiders for now. Since Li Yu was not feeling well, Fred naturally had no intention of arguing with Yehua. He took the initiative to say goodbye to Li Yu. Lord Li Yu, please rest well. I will visit you again during the day to repay your kindness. With that, he and his secretary left. Yehua carried Li Yue into his bedroom. Li Yue had completely closed her eyes as she was truly exhausted. Suddenly, she felt her whole body being enveloped in warm water. She quickly opened her eyes and found that she was lying in a bathtub full of hot water, and Yehua was sitting beside her, using a soft cloth to wipe her body. Quote, when did my clothes come off? Before, even during psychic comfort, the curtains were drawn and the lights were off so she couldn't see anything clearly. Now, it was the first time she was so exposed in front of Yehua. You're so tiny. Li Yue panicked and tried to cover her private parts. In her flustered state, she almost slipped out of the bathtub. Fortunately, Yehua caught her sliding body in time. Feeling the warm hand on her back, Li Yu could feel her heart pounding. She closed her eyes, pretending not to see. Whatever, she thought. He's touched, kneaded, rubbed, and kiss me during the last 2 psychic comforts. There's nothing to be embarrassed about now that he can see everything. Li Yue tried her best to convince herself that it was nothing. It was really nothing. Just then, she heard Ye Hua's soft laughter. Li Yue opened her eyes out of curiosity and saw that Ye Hua's eyes were filled with indulgence. His gaze was gentle and focused. Li Yue was about to blame him for laughing at her, but she didn't expect Ye Hua to expose himself. Ye Hua smiled. Now you've seen everything. It's fair now, right? Li Yue's gaze was drawn to Ye Hua's chest muscles, abs, V-line, and his amazing strength below. Ye Hua naturally noticed the dazed look in Li Yue's eyes. He took Li Yue's hand and placed it on his chest. You can touch me. As soon as he said that, the delicate person in the bathtub instantly blushed, and her eyes were full of fury. You're talking nonsense! Then, the delicate person turned her back to him, but the hand on his chest showed no intention of pulling back. Ye Hua couldn't help but laugh softly. He then got up, stepped into the bathtub, and held Li Yue in his arms. Ye Hua, what are you doing? Of course, I'm here to serve you wholeheartedly. Then, he placed Li Yue's hands on his legs. Now you can touch me as you please. After saying that, he was glared at by the delicate person in his arms. Seeing this, he stopped teasing her and took the soft and delicate cloth to carefully wipe Li Yue's body. He had added some muscle and nerve-relaxing medicine to the bathtub so that Li Yue could relax better. The medicine was indeed effective. When he had just finished wiping Li Yue's upper body, the delicate person in his arms had already fallen asleep. Ye Hua could only lighten his touch and continue to wipe Li Yue's body. The next morning, Li Yue woke up earlier than Ye Hua, which was a rare occurrence. She felt refreshed after a good night's sleep. Ye Hua was still sleeping soundly beside her. Li Yue stared at his slowly rising and falling chest. Her palm suddenly felt itchy. It was all his fault for deliberately seducing her last night. Before she transmigrated, she had always stayed in the palace. Not to mention men, she had hardly even met male animals. Ye Hua, on the other hand, was always trying to seduce her. To be honest, even though they had only had 3 intimate encounters, her hands seemed to have developed a bad habit. Li Yue stared at Yahu's face for a long time. After making sure he was really asleep, she carefully lifted the blanket and hooked her finger to pull open Ye Hua's half-open pajamas. As she did so, she kept an eye on Ye Hua's eyes and muttered to herself, Ye Hua, don't wake up. I'll only touch you once. We're already companions. It should be fine to touch you once, right? From the initial gentle touch to becoming more and more bold and daring, the focused Li Yue had no idea how much agony Ye Hua was in. He had to pretend to be asleep and control his expression so as not to reveal any flaws. He also had to endure, oh no, I couldn't hold back. Just as Li Yue was about to feast her eyes and restore everything to its original state, she realized that Ye Hua's amazing strength had already come to attention. Li Yue stopped what she was doing and stared blankly at the sight, not knowing what to do. She looked up at the clock on the wall and saw that it was almost time for Ye Hua to wake up every day. In a panic, Li Yue simply hid under the covers, completely covering herself. Yes, he's not awake, and he doesn't know what just happened. Ye Hua, who was lying on his side, heard the movement next to him. He carefully opened his eyes a crack to see what the little female was doing. After seeing that Li Yue was completely under the blanket, he dared to open his eyes and breathe a sigh of relief. Ye Hua looked at his lower body helplessly. Normally, such an accident would go back to normal in a short while, and he would always endure it by himself. But now that his little female was lying next to him, how could his chaotic heart be at peace? Suddenly, the little female next to him moved again. Ye Hua could only close his eyes again, pretending that nothing had happened. Li Yue was covered by the blanket, but it didn't take long for her to feel short of breath, so she had to stick her head out again. Ye Hua, Li Yue muttered to herself. This shouldn't be a problem, right? Ye Hua, who was lying next to him pretending to be asleep, was about to suffer internal injuries from holding it in. What's wrong? Hearing the little female's exclamation, he had to tightly grip the blanket to barely maintain his composure. He couldn't help but scream in his heart, You don't look. The little female next to him seemed to have heard his inner cry and suddenly got out of bed and hid in the bathroom. Only then could Ye Hua breathe a sigh of relief. He sat up and looked at himself in distress. Just as he was debating whether to get up now, Li Yue came out of the bathroom again. He could only lie back down and pretend to be asleep, but this time was more difficult than he had imagined. After Li Yue came out of the bathroom, she knelt on the bed, her hands hovering over Yi Hua's aroused strength, hesitating whether to touch it. She had used her calm in the bathroom to check. Normally, an SS-class adult male like Yi Hua would not experience this kind of situation. If she didn't do anything, wouldn't Yi Hua know what kind of person she was? No, I can't let him know. With that thought, Liu had no choice but to continue to solve the problem she had created. It was the only solution she had found just now. Suddenly, a muffled groan came from next to him. She was so scared that she quickly turned to look at Ye Hua. She felt relieved when she saw that he hadn't woken up, but she didn't expect this to be so difficult. After a long time, the problem still wasn't solved. She couldn't help but whisper angrily, "What's going on?" She was both anxious and angry. Suddenly, a warm hand grabbed her wrist. You, let me handle it." The sudden voice made Li Yue scream in shock. She lost her balance and fell to the side. Fortunately, Ye Hua was quick to catch her in time. "Li Yue, are you okay?" Seeing Yi Hua's worried eyes, Li Yue was full of guilt. Yi Hua, when did you wake up?" Li Yue knew how flustered she was now. She didn't expect to be greeted by Ye Hua's warm kiss. "Don't worry, I'll take care of this myself." Then Ye Hua got up and walked to the bathroom. A sound of running water could be heard. Li Yue sat on the bed in a daze for a long time. She suddenly realized something was wrong. When Ye Hua came out of the bathroom, she was both embarrassed and angry. Her voice was even louder than usual. "Ye Hua, be honest. When did you wake up?" Ye Hua knelt on one knee in front of her. "I'm sorry, my stamina was lacking, and I couldn't satisfy you. If you like this kind of play, you can use the same on me tonight." Upon hearing this, Li Yue immediately picked up the pillow from the bed and threw it at him. So he had been awake the whole time. "I don't like it," she yelled. Then, both embarrassed and angry, she prepared to get out of bed and leave. But as soon as her feet touched the ground, her legs felt weak, and she immediately stumbled. Li Yu let out a cry of surprise. The next second, she was lying steadily in Ye Hua's arms. Quote, "Ye Hua, my legs feel so weak." Upon hearing this, Ye Hua was also full of worry. He recalled that in the past few days, Li Yu's body would become very weak after each comfort session. But this time, it was even more serious than before. "After we finish breakfast, I'll take you to the doctor for a checkup." Then Ye Hua picked up Li Yu and walked downstairs. He felt even more disgusted with that fox. If it weren't for that fox yesterday, his delicate partner wouldn't be in this state. At the dining table, Li Yue was still bothered by what had just happened. Ye Hua was sitting across from her, and the thought of what had just happened made her feel very humiliated. She didn't have much of an appetite after a few bites. Li Yue got up, looked down to avoid Ye Hua, and said, "I'll wait for you on the sofa." Her energy had recovered a bit, and her legs weren't as weak as they were just now. But before she could walk a few steps, she was picked up by Ye Hua. Soon, she was gently placed on the sofa. "Are you mad at me? Is it because I woke up just now, or because I made you tired just now?" As soon as he said that, Ye Hua clearly saw the little female's cheeks turn red. She suddenly leaned back on the sofa and buried her face in it. "Go eat quickly." Seeing this, Ye Hua had no choice but to leave. It was natural for a female to use a male, and as a companion, it was his duty. He had originally thought that his little female liked to play different games, but now he felt that wasn't the case. She clearly liked it, but she didn't dare to do anything when she was awake. Their previous intimate encounters were all initiated by him, not by Liu. Ye Hua was also conflicted now. Should he continue to pretend to be asleep like this morning to give his little female a chance, or should he be a guide and lead Liu Wei to be bold and do what she liked? At the Imperial Advanced Hospital, Ye Hua accompanied Liu Wei to the examination room. The special physician, Lu Xian, was using a psychic detector to examine Liu Wei's body. The crystal column of the instrument suddenly lit up. Everyone there except Liu Wei was confused. The other two males' eyes widened in disbelief. Ye Hua looked at Dr. Lu Xian. "Dr. Lu!" At this point, Lu Xian put away the instrument. "That's right. Your companion's mental power has grown to B class. It seems my previous guess was correct. Lord Li Yue's physical weakness is related to the growth of her mental power level." Li Yue was very puzzled. "What are you talking about?" Lu Xian explained to Li Yue in detail. Under normal circumstances, a female's mental power level does not change after awakening. Research has found that the root cause of male loss of control is the dark matter entangled in their mental sea. A female's mental power can dissolve this dark matter, but there is also a very rare situation where the female turns this dark matter to their own use. According to your previous description, Lord Li Yu's current situation should belong to the latter. The sudden surge in mental power causes the body to be unable to adapt, which leads to weakness. However, I have a special medicine here, but it may cause side effects like mania. As he spoke, Lu Xian suddenly looked up at Yehua. Commander Yehua, at that time, you will need to help your companion vent. Yehua nodded without hesitation. No problem. But Li Yue was still a little uneasy. Vent? Vent what? Lu Xian said truthfully, generally speaking, it is violent venting, and some unknown situations may also occur. At this time, Yehua also gently comforted Li Yue in his ear. Don't you remember? I am an SS-class beastman. Ordinary acts of violence will not harm me. Li Yue didn't want Yehua to get hurt, but the two males in front of her kept emphasizing the necessity of taking the medicine, so she finally nodded and agreed. Lu Xian pushed open the side door of the consultation room and invited Li Yue and Yehua in. As soon as she entered, the walls full of torture devices made Li Yue gasp. Why are there so many torture devices here? There is a great disparity in physical strength between females and males. To prevent the female from accidentally hurting themselves when venting, these tools are prepared. Afterward, Lu Xian put the medicine in Yehua's hand, and only the two of them were left in the room. Not long after Li Yu drank the medicine, she felt uncomfortable all over. There was indeed a restlessness in her heart that needed to be vented, but it had not reached the point of needing violent relief. She straddled Yehua, holding him tightly with both hands. Yehua, something doesn't feel right. Why was her current feeling different from what the doctor had just said? Outside the door, on the tray of instruments held by Lu Xian, there was a syringe filled with a tranquilizer. He held the doorknob tightly with one hand. The door had a crack in it, and he could hear clearly what was happening inside. He was also an SS-class single male without a companion or comfort. Fortunately, his loss of control value had been relatively stable, but now it seemed like something was crashing around inside him, trying to break free. Even his eyes were staring at the crack in the door. His originally calm and restrained gaze gradually became unfocused, stained with an inappropriate look. It took him a long time to steady himself and come back to his senses. Lu Xian carefully closed the door again. He took a deep breath, picked up the syringe from the instrument tray, and plunged it into his neck, injecting all the tranquilizer into his body. It was clear that he was the one who needed the tranquilizer the most right now. After another half an hour, the door was finally opened. Yehua walked out, holding Li Yue in his arms. Lu Xian immediately stepped forward. Lord Li Yue, how are you feeling now? Li Yue, who was held in Yehua's arms, buried her face in Yehua's chest and replied softly, Much better. I'm not that tired anymore. She was indeed much better, but she had just done something like that in a hospital. She now had no face to see her attending physician. Yehua was focused on the little female in his arms and didn't notice Lu Xian's slight abnormality for a moment. Dr. Lu, does my companion need any other treatment? Lu Xian controlled his eyes, not looking at Li Yu. He lowered his gaze and fiddled with the documents on the table, speaking in a business-like tone. Lord Li Yu's fatigue is caused by a mismatch between her mental power and physical strength. Therefore, she can increase her physical strength through exercise to alleviate the discomfort after comfort. When he said this, Lu Xian's eyes were a little shifty. He deliberately lowered his eyes to hide something. After Yehua carried Li Yue out of the consultation room, he collapsed into the chair. At this moment, he could finally stop restraining himself and breathe heavily. A moment later, Lu Xian took another tranquilizer from the medicine box and injected it into his body. He took a small mirror from the drawer to check his eyes. Sure enough, his originally dark brown eyes were now stained with a starry silver. He was a snow wolf. Unlike other beastmen, high-level males of the snow wolf tribe would have their eyes stained with silver when they became uncontrollably emotional, and he, even after injecting 2 full doses of tranquilizer, the starry silver in his eyes had not faded, like the stars in the night sky. Lu Xian put away the mirror and closed his eyes, wanting to calm himself down. But as soon as he closed his eyes, his mind was filled with the gentle and kind female who had just looked at Yehua with a caring gaze. This was not the first time he had met Li Yue. As the only special doctor in the empire, he was sometimes invited to the security bureau to treat injured males. That was where he had met Li Yue. He had seen her say with a resolute face, "One life, one world, one pair." Now, he had for the first time developed an immoral thought. What if Lord Liu were his companion? But what could he do? Even Fred, the young master of the nine-tailed fox family, who was the best at capturing females, had not won Liu's heart. It was even more impossible for him, a boring and uninteresting doctor who always had a cold expression. Lu, Qian shook his head, opened his eyes, and tried to focus his thoughts on the incomplete case file in front of him. He stared at the mental power level column and was in a dilemma. The detector showed B class, but that was only because the highest the detector he had could show was B class. After thinking for a moment, Lu Xian finally decided to fill in D class. A female's mental power growing was something that hadn't happened in the Empire for almost 100 years. Once it was exposed, it would definitely cause a sensation. Lord Li Yue's physical condition was not ideal yet. In addition, the one in the palace was not to be trifled with. Yehua carried Li Yu away from the hospital. As soon as he walked into the aircraft, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. The used tranquilizer in the consultation room, and in Lu Xian's shifty eyes, he seemed to have caught a glimpse of a little red light. As a male, he naturally knew what that meant. Something bad has happened. Back at the villa, Yehua went to prepare lunch. Li Yue continued to nest on the sofa. Suddenly, a message popped up on her comm. It was an invitation to a dance from someone named Knight's Charm. A physical invitation would be sent later. Li Yue scrolled up the chat page and saw that there were many similar invitations. It seemed that the original owner had participated in many times before. With this in mind, Li Yue was more interested in the dance. Coincidentally, the doorbell rang the next second. Before Li Yue could get up, Yehua had already arrived at the door and brought a file bag to her. The words "Knight's Charm" were printed on it, causing his pupils to constrict. Sure enough, Li Yue took out an invitation from inside. "Are you going to the dance tonight?" Li Yue looked at the invitation with curiosity and nodded, her voice filled with anticipation. "Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun." At this moment, Li Yue did not notice that Yua's body had stiffened. She was still muttering to herself, "What should I wear tonight?" Yehua quickly adjusted his thoughts. He smiled faintly and said softly, "I'll go with you to buy clothes after we eat. I'll go to the dance with you tonight. I'll make sure you have a good time." The two people in the house didn't notice a snow-white fluffy animal running away from the villa. In the top floor office of the security bureau, as soon as Fred walked in, Wei-Chi walked up to him with a worried face. "Young master, where have you been?" "You've been deliberately avoiding Her Highness the Princess these past few days, which has already caused her dissatisfaction. Just now, Her Highness sent a message that if you obediently attend the dance held by Knight's Charm tonight, she will give you..." Wei-Chi paused for a moment and then continued, "the title of a servant. If you still don't show up tonight, she will use the power of the royal family to drive you out of the empire and not comfort any male for a year." Wei-Chi was also very helpless when he said this. Her Highness the Princess was the only female in the empire with a G-class mental power. This high level of mental power allowed her to have great influence, and no one dared to defy her. And the males who were controlled by dark matter could only willingly submit to her to prevent themselves from losing control. The second half of the princess's sentence was to make her young master an enemy, making him a target. Wei-Chi looked at Fred with concern, but the other party just lowered his eyes and thought for a moment before taking the invitation from his hand. "I will go tonight." Wei-Chi didn't expect his young master to agree so readily. "Young master, have you really thought it through?" Unlike a normal dance, this dance is specifically for tormenting males. He had never attended such a dance before, but after every dance, he would hear that someone's male partner was crippled or gone, and someone's female partner had a new male partner. The cruelty in the dance was unbearable to imagine. "Young master, Her Highness the Princess is clearly trying to make you her prey. How about I find some medicine for you, so that you won't be so painful at the dance?" Fred shook his head. "No need. You can go do something else." He had just heard outside the villa that Li Yu was also going to the dance tonight. Although the females who could attend such dances were all depraved, he believed that Li Yu was not that kind of person. Every time Li Yue looked at Yehua and spoke to him, it made him extremely crazy with jealousy. So tonight, He might as well take a gamble. He would bet that Li Yue would feel sorry for him, just like last time. In the evening, Ye Hua accompanied Li Yue to the dance. There was still some time before the dance officially began. Ye Hua accompanied him to walk around the two-story banquet hall. Li Yue always felt that the layout here was very strange. The stage was very strange. It looked like a lift, and there were many small bumps on the floor that could easily trip people. It didn't look like a place for dancing at all. Li Yue felt a sudden sharp pain in his head. By the time he reacted, a pair of warm hands had been placed on his temples. "Does your head hurt again?" Li Yue nodded. After the discomfort in his head completely disappeared, he realized what Ye Hua had just said. "Did my head hurt often before?" "Yes. We went to the hospital to get it checked, but there were no diseases." "It might be because you didn't rest well?" A headache was not a big deal, so Li Yue didn't pay too much attention to it. He pulled Ye Hua and quickly left the hall. Ye Hua led Li Yue to a private room on the second floor, which was directly opposite the stage he had seen on the first floor. Something flashed through Li Yue's mind, but he couldn't grasp the specific words. He felt a little dizzy. Fortunately, Ye Hua caught him in time from behind and then carried him to the restroom of the private room. The room was very luxuriously decorated, and the lighting was dim and ambiguous. Li Yue was gently placed on the sofa by Ye Hua. He smiled and teased him. "Ye Hua, you're very familiar with this place." "Yes, I've been here many times." This time he lowered his eyes, hiding the emotions in them. Even his tone was flat, with no emotion. "You can sit here and rest for a while. There's still some time before the dance starts." Hearing this, Li Yue keenly noticed that something was wrong with Ye Hua. He immediately reached out and held the hand that was hanging by his side. It was still trembling slightly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Maybe I didn't get a good rest last night." Then Li Yu saw a smile on Ye Hua's face. He could tell that the smile was to reassure him because it was tinged with bitterness. Since Ye Hua didn't want to talk about it, he decided not to ask any more questions. "Ye Hua, is there a bathroom in the restroom?" "I'll take you." The bathroom door was closed. Li Yu was taking care of his needs. He found it strange that even the floor and walls of the bathroom had many iron rings embedded in them. Li Yue didn't think too much about it. As he was washing his hands, a bouquet of roses on the sink made him can't help but look at them a few more times. Suddenly, a large number of images burst into his mind. Ye Hua was completely naked, kneeling in front of him in a very humiliating position. A leather collar was around his neck, and a chain was attached to the collar, which was then chained to an iron ring on the floor, forcing his entire face to be pressed against the ground. Commander is truly a sight to behold. These roses look so dull in a normal vase. What do you say? Should I give them a different place? His tone was very indifferent, without a hint of emotion. The sound of glass shattering immediately rang out, followed by the sound of rose branches that had not yet had their thorns trimmed. Water from the vase, along with glass shards, scattered all over the floor. "Commander, do it yourself!" The sound of the vase breaking brought Li Yue back to his senses. He had accidentally knocked over the vase while lost in his memories. The scene on the floor and the image in his memory once again overlapped. The instantaneous rush of guilt and disbelief made him feel breathless. How can such a terrible person exist? Yu Ye, what's wrong? Is your head hurting again? He looked up at the sound, his gaze meeting Ye Hua's concerned and anxious eyes. At that moment, his eyes turned red. "Ye Hua, I'm sorry." Seeing Li Yue's eyes suddenly turn red, Ye Hua was at a loss. But when he saw the mess on the floor, he could probably guess why Li Yue said that. He leaned down, picked Li Yue up, and carried her to the sofa outside. "It's been a long time. You don't have to worry about this," he said, his voice soft and coaxing as he gently wiped away the tears on Li Yue's cheeks. He was about to put his hand on Li Yue's back and pat her gently. But Li Yue suddenly looked up, her expression serious. "Let me see the wounds." "No!" Ye Hua interrupted Li Yue before she could finish. It was the first time Li Yue had seen Ye Hua's voice so agitated and firm. "But you were badly hurt. Not just the thorns of the roses, but also the glass shards on the floor were embedded in your flesh." It was a pain she didn't even dare to think about. But Ye Hua had endured it. Ye Hua grabbed Li Yue's restless hands, his eyes full of panic. "It's been a long time. The wounds have already healed. Besides, with my physical strength, those small injuries are nothing." As he was speaking, a pair of hands suddenly cupped his chin, making him stop mid-sentence. It was Li Yu, blinking her watery eyes, and looking at him very seriously. Yehua, I was bad before. I can make it up to you. Tell me what you like. As her hands cupped Yehua's face, Li Yue suddenly felt Yehua's entire body stiffen. She thought it was because her actions were rude and was about to withdraw her hands. Suddenly, a warm hand was placed on her right hand, pressing it firmly against Yehua's cheek. Lord Li Yue, this is my duty. You don't have to feel guilty about it. In fact, compared to other males, I am already very lucky. You have already given me so much. Li Yue was puzzled. But I was tormenting you before. In the Empire, how many males are there? Many males can't even get one comfort before they completely lose control. You have already helped me 3 times, Yehua said. He knew that the body in front of him already contained a brand new soul. He didn't know what had happened, and he even worried that the original Li Yue would come back and ruin him again. He often reminded himself that he should be content with the happiness he had in the past few days. But when he saw the delicate person in front of him, he couldn't help but want to carefully and tentatively ask for more. Just like now, while Li Yue was a little distracted, he held her hand and gently kissed it on his lips twice before reluctantly letting go. Is that so? Li Yue stammered a little. Yehua chuckled. So you don't have to feel guilty for me. The tingling sensation in her palm once again diverted Li Yue's attention. After a while, she suddenly realized that with this layout and stage, tonight's dance was definitely not an ordinary dance. Yehua, I didn't know it would be like this before I came. How about we just go home? Okay. Then the two of them walked out together. As soon as Yehua opened the door to the private room, Fred suddenly appeared in front of them. Yehua was not as hostile as before. He immediately opened the door and let him in. His instincts as a beastman told him that Fred's condition was very bad at the moment. The pair of fox ears on top of his head were drooping, and even the foxtail behind him was weakly dragging on the ground. He couldn't even control his beast form. Fred had clearly suffered something just now. Fred, are you okay? Yehua, quickly help him into the restroom. Just as Li Yu helped Fred, she heard a furious voice from outside the door. The footsteps were getting closer, and it sounded like a lot of people were heading this way. At this moment, Fred had completely transformed into a white fox and was held in Li Yu's arms. She could feel the weakness of the white fox in her arms. She reached out and gently stroked its back. Her hands had healing abilities. As soon as she touched the soft fur on the fox's back, Li Yu felt a flowing power in her body flowing towards the white fox in her arms. After stroking it several times, the fox in her arms was finally able to open its eyes. Li Yue couldn't help but feel anxious. Yehua, what should we do now? Yehua opened his mouth, intending to speak, but his expression suddenly changed. He immediately pulled Li Yue behind him to protect her. The next moment, the door of the private room was shattered. Many people walked in from outside. The leader was the arrogant and haughty princess of the empire, Tan Shi Yue. When she saw Li Yue behind Yehua, the disdain in her eyes deepened. Who do we have here? It's you, you useless person. How dare you touch someone I've taken a liking to? Tan Ji Yue took a few steps forward, intending to approach Li Yue, but Yehua suddenly blocked her way. As a male with a companion and a chief commander with great military achievements, Tan Shi Yu's face showed displeasure, but her tone was still somewhat polite. Commander, how about I take care of this useless female for you? Then you can regain your freedom. Tan Shi Yue naturally knew what Li Yue had done to Yehua. Although it was a male partner's duty to protect their companion, Tan Shi Yue believed that Yehua would definitely seize this opportunity to regain his freedom. As long as I'm here, no one can hurt her. Yehua's firm tone and the dangerous look in his eyes surprised Tan Shi Yue. Commander, you wouldn't dare interfere in matters between females, would you? It's my duty. What's there to interfere? Tan Shi Yue raised her eyebrows. How dare you defy me? She clenched her fist and suddenly swung it, aiming for Yehua's face. The rules of the country prevented Yehua from retaliating against a female. He was about to step back to dodge, but a figure suddenly flashed in front of him. It was Li Yue, who stepped forward and bumped into Tan Shi Yue. Tan Shi Yue naturally didn't expect this, and lost her balance, falling to the side. Of course, Li Yu, who was holding the white fox in her arms, also lost her balance due to inertia and was about to fall. The white fox in her arms immediately jumped down, ready to be her cushion. Suddenly, Li Yue felt her body sway, and the next moment, she was in Yi Hua's arms. She looked up, her eyes smiling as she looked at Yi Hua, who was protecting her. This made Ye Hua a little flustered. "What are you smiling about?" Hey, I knew you would catch me." Seeing that Li Yue was fine, the white fox on the ground also got up and crawled back towards Li Yu, falling back into her embrace and rubbing against her greedily. "You useless person, how dare you bump into me? Do you believe me when I say—" Li Yue turned around and stood in front of Ye Hua. She had originally wanted to see what Tan Shiyue was going to do, but she saw a panicked look on her face instead. I'm the princess of the empire. I'm the female with the highest mental power in the empire. I won't bother with you." Li Yu was confused and didn't understand why Tan Shiyue had suddenly changed. "Lord Li Yu, please hand over this disgraceful brat to me." Li Yue looked up and saw a beautiful and elegant woman. Her fox eyes were long and alluring. Li Yue had a general idea of who the person was. At this time, Ye Hua also whispered in her ear, "This is the current head of the nine-tailed fox family and Fred's mother, Olivia. Lord Li Yue, this brat is a disgrace. He has a marriage contract, yet he dares to flirt with and seduce you. Please hand him over to me." Seeing the unfriendly look, Li Yue couldn't help but hug the white fox in her arms even tighter. "What do you want to do?" Olivia said without hesitation. "I'll deal with him according to family law." "No!" Li Yu said. "Fred, he didn't seduce me." Quote, "Lord Li Yue, the nine-tailed fox family has always valued the chastity of males. This beast has a marriage contract, yet he is tainted with the scent of another female. According to our family rules, such a debauched fox should have his limbs cut off and be thrown to a junkyard to fend for himself." Upon hearing this, Li Yu hugged the fox in her arms even tighter. She remembered that she had indeed touched Fred at home last time. "It was me! I forced him! If you have any dissatisfaction, you can come at me." In that case, to prevent the reputation of the nine-tailed fox family from being damaged, please take in this brat, Lord Li Yu. Yua stood by and watched Li Yue's protective demeanor without saying anything. As a male partner, he had no right to interfere. As long as Li Yu was happy taking in others, that was all that mattered. As a male, however, he despised Fred's pitiful tactics. The family had left, and what surprised Ye Hua was that the princess also simply left after saying a few words. This was completely unlike something this arrogant person would do. Although he was curious, Ye Hua didn't think too much about it. He stepped forward and put his arm around Li Yu's shoulder, suppressing his disdain for the white fox's tactics. He said softly, Yui, let's go home first. There's a treatment pod at home. This fox is an SS class." Yi Hua held back the second half of his sentence, "He won't die," and changed his words to, "He won't be in any trouble." Brother, save me!" Tan Shiyue ran in a panic to a pond. A voice echoed from the pond. "What is it?" The voice was clear and distant, as if it came from the heavens, without a trace of worldly dust. "Brother, my mental power seems to have dropped again." As soon as Tan Shiyue finished speaking, the originally calm pond immediately rippled. With a subtle but powerful sound of water, the center of the pond began to churn. Amidst the shimmering light, a small white dragon slowly appeared. Its scales shone with a soft and pure silvery white light under the sun. It rose into the air, its posture lithe and elegant. It circled once in the air before transforming into a human form and landing in front of Tan Shiyue. He was wearing a white robe with a clear and handsome face, and his features were exquisitely sculpted. There was a sense of calmness and detachment between his eyebrows, and his eyes were deep and serene. He reached out and placed his palm on Tan Shiyue's forehead. After a long time, he slowly spoke. "It has only dropped to B class. Go back and wait. The tonic will be delivered tonight." "Only B class? But brother, can you help me increase my mental power to S class or higher?" At this moment, Tan Shiyue's face was filled with humility and pleading, without any of her usual arrogance. The man said, without hesitation, A class is already the highest level of mental power for a female in the empire. There is no need to increase it further. Brother, have you only given that mental power increasing tonic to me?